Hi and welcome to Zodiac, Attempted Redemption, Episode 4. My name is Monty. I'm your host and author. Thank you so much for joining. To recap Episode 3, Clara's first article of substance was printed above the fold. The Zodiac, Michael, calls her at work. He even waits while she figures out how to record on her new cell phone. After Nikki found Michael in the basement looking ill, he had disturbing dreams. He wants so much to find any explanation for what's happening to him and the box. Nikki has noticed the changes too, but to this point, she's thinking it's stress related to his parents, the stress of being a young adult, and the passing of his grandfather. If she only knew, while she worked, Michael sat in front of his Aunt Anita's house, where he would enter and take 4 lives, ridding the world of 4 squatters that needed to be punished in Michael's eyes. Later, while Michael waited for Nikki in the parking lot of her work, he saw what he thought could have been Steve, the Camaro guy. The voice in his head convincing him that, why wouldn't it be? He was better than Michael in every way. There's no reasoning Michael can come up with to help him cope with his new life, which leads him to explore the idea that his grandfather was a Zodiac, and if he was, how could he live such 2 different lives? After Michael makes a statement to the press, and then follows it up with the killing of 3 drug dealers, which he just so happened to be watching while they carried a lot of cash, he realizes after the killings that he's relieved. Short-lived, but relieved. Maybe that was the balance that his grandfather had found. The money didn't hurt either. He went back and forth about the money, but decided it was put there in front of him for a reason. And to round out the episode, we meet Detective and Special Agent Shawn Trammel, a man with his own past to deal with. A detective, flawed, but trying. Is that enough in this case? Today we begin Episode 4 with Chapter 18. Are you okay? She didn't like getting home so late, but Estelle had asked. Estelle, who was more like a sister than a friend, needed a prescription picked up, and Clara, exhausted, head spinning, said yes, because that's what Clara did. Because some part of her still believed that kindness had weight, that it counted for something. Even now, even with the Zodiac back in her life, the killer hadn't been heard from in days. The Mission District story had run its course. 3 drug dealers made local headlines, sure, until the headlines moved on. Unless, of course, they were killed by the alleged relative of the Zodiac. Then it was national. Then it mattered. For a fleeting moment in time. Now the pressure was mounting. Top brass wanted another story yesterday. It had been years since Clara felt the heat like this. Years since a case had gripped her so tightly. She forgot to eat, forgot to breathe, and for a while, she missed it. Now, be careful what you wish for, whispered through her skull like wind through a broken window. She pulled her SUV into the garage, headlights crossing the back wall. Then remembered she hadn't checked the mail. It was always junk mail. Ads, flyers, someone wanting money for a charity. But not today, just one envelope. Her name was scrawled across the front. Jagged letters, sharp, rushed, unmistakable. No return address, no postage, wasn't even sealed. But she didn't even remember sitting down. She was so confused. But now she sat on the curb, envelope in her lap. Eyes locked on the print. The garage door still open. The engine cooling behind her, ticking in the quiet. Her phone buzzed. A voicemail. She tapped play, barely listening, until Andrea's voice came through. Hey, just wanted to say we missed you at dinner. Everyone was asking where you were. We'll have to try again soon. Claire closed her eyes. She hadn't just forgot. In her mind, she had disappeared. A neighbor passed, jogger's outfit, a golden retriever tugging at the leash. He slowed. "Are you okay?" Was she? Clara looked up, smiled. "Yes," she said. "Thank you." But the truth? Her hands were shaking, because the letter was from him, because he now knew where she lived. Inside, Clara was freaking out. Chapter 19. Out of Mind. It was a slippery slope Michael was on. The lack of sleep, the hallucinations, the voices, all of it managed with whatever expired pills he could find in his dead grandparents' medical cabinet. Not exactly ideal. He had nearly flushed the bottles more than once, but letting go wasn't his strong suit. And lately, he convinced himself the hauntings wasn't just in his head. It was the watch, or the bloodstained cloths, or maybe the unfinished ciphers. Something was haunting him, or maybe not haunting, but calling. Nikki was at work. Michael was on his way downtown. The plan was simple. Dump the box in one of the alley dumpsters near the bar district. Pop a couple pills, order a beer, maybe a pretzel. He loved pretzels. See the anxiety, the noise, the static, and he thought it would all wash away. It wasn't a great plan, but it was the best one he had. Better than murder, probably. That option would certainly reduce the number of abusive pimps and drug dealers in the area. But he wasn't built for that, he told himself, over and over. He had considered bringing the money too, tossing it, burning it, letting go. But some part of him still believed it had been left for him. A gift, a message, a challenge? From his grandfather? Maybe. He hated lying to Nikki, but seeing her so happy did something to him. For the first time, they could go on real dates. Not ones that involved splitting a 6-inch sub, but one where he could pay. Now they had options. Meals with silverware, drinks with citrus wedges, a dessert menu she didn't feel guilty opening. It was a lot of money. Especially for someone who'd been living off the occasional 20 his mom slipped him like contraband. They'd gone to church, just another rhythm in the routine, a way to stay connected, grounded. But lately, Michael felt disconnected from all of it. It started small. He missed a midweek service here or there, skipped a prayer night. Now, the idea of sitting in the pew made him feel like a hypocrite. So the night before, he had said, "Hey, why don't you go with your parents this Sunday?" Nikki had stared as if processing what he had just said. "I go to church with you." "Maybe it's time," he said. Maybe, just maybe, you go with your parents? I think it'd be good for you and them." He said it gently, smiling, even-toned. But he did mean it. He wanted to not have to fight about faith. He didn't want to sit in the sanctuary feeling like he was rotting inside. And more than anything, he didn't want her to see the cracks that were starting to show. He looked down at the box in his lap, so unassuming. Inside, nightmares. He had this strange thought, absurd and terrifying. What if the box hadn't been hidden to protect someone from finding it? What if it had been waiting for him? The louder of the two voices in his head whispered, "Keep the box. It's important. It's your destiny." And Michael, somewhere deep down, started to believe it. Maybe fate wasn't just a thing that pulled you forward. Maybe it was a thing that waited, patient, silent, inevitable. Maybe it had been circling him all the time, through childhood tantrums, through funerals and failures, through every rage-filled silence he'd swallowed whole. Maybe it wasn't madness. Maybe it was his inheritance. Chapter 20. The Woman and the Warning. There was a serial killer in their midst, and if possible, he wanted in. Not just as an observer, as a contributor, which is how he found himself sitting in a stiff wooden chair in a precinct lobby that smelled like old carpet and takeout, waiting to speak with someone who probably didn't want to speak to him. Eventually, a young man with too short of a tie and too bright of a smile sat down beside him. A few minutes of small talk confirmed it. They didn't have anything. The department was under pressure from upstairs. They were scrambling. He'd seen it too many times. Shawn offered his help in whatever capacity they'd accept. To the detective's credit, he didn't shut him down. Instead, he walked Shawn into a cramped room off the main corridor. Inside, he handed over the working file. It was thin, filled mostly with news clippings and copies of Zodiac letters. Shawn's attention caught on a printed transcript. "Is this from the phone call to the Chronicle?" he asked. The detective nodded. "Keep it. We've got copies." 2 minutes later, Shawn understood why. The captain arrived, flanked by members of his staff, all smiling. He shook Shawn's hand firmly and said he was a big fan of the podcast, the book, the Miles Humphreys case. Shawn smiled politely. He'd heard that tone before, praise as a prelude to dismissal. After leaving the precinct, Shawn found a bench outside and checked his phone. No missed calls, no texts. Nothing from Faith. He tried not to be disappointed. Grab a sandwich, maybe invite her to lunch. He decided against it. Instead, he reopened the file and scanned the notes again. So little to go on. No pattern yet. And still, he kept circling back to Clara. She was the key. And according to the file, she'd barely been questioned. That was a mistake. He opened his rideshare app. The Chronicle office was about 10 minutes away. He was just about to book the ride when his phone rang. "Hey," Faith said. "Where are you at right now?" He gave her the address. "Perfect," she said. "I have someone you'll want to talk to. I can be there in 5. He barely had time to toss his sandwich wrapper and pop a mint before a convertible Lexus pulled up to the curb. Faith was behind the wheel, sunglasses on, hair pulled back, effortless as ever. As they drove, she filled him in. She'd reached out to an old friend, someone with ties to upper management at the Chronicle. It was a gamble, but one that had paid off. Now she and Shawn were on their way to meet Clara St. Cloud. Shawn was stunned and grateful. He thanked her. Still, he couldn't help but wonder who this friend was. A boyfriend? An ex? He knew better than to ask. But the question lingered. The coffee shop was winding down from its lunch rush when they arrived. Clara was already seated in the back corner, facing the door. Smart. When she spotted them, she stood and offered a warm smile and a hug. Shawn hadn't expected that. The women ordered sandwiches. Shawn stuck with coffee. The conversation flowed easily at first. Stories about the podcast that had reignited interest in the Miles Humphreys case, the upcoming book deal, even whispers about a movie. Shawn couldn't confirm the last one, but he wasn't about to ruin the vibe. Then Clara leaned in, lowering her voice. "I got a letter in my mailbox yesterday." Shawn froze. Faith went still beside him. "What kind of letter?" Shawn asked. "Zodiac," Clara said quietly. "No stamp, no return address, just sitting in my mailbox." She reached into her bag without prompting and handed it over. The envelope was worn, edges soft from being handled too many times. Shawn examined it. Then he looked at her. "You didn't call the police?" Clara shook her head. "No." Faith couldn't hide the questioning in her voice. "Why?" "Because I needed to decide what to do with it first." A beat of silence. "He knows where you live," Shawn said. "Yes," Clara said, calm, even. She took a slow sip of her wine, then set the glass down without flinching. "Have you noticed anything strange lately?" Shawn asked. "Anything unusual around the house?" Clara looked away, toward the window, toward nothing. "There's been a man across the street," she said finally, "just standing there a few nights ago. I told myself it was nothing." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because stories don't take shape by accident. You must let them breathe. See where they lead." Faith's eyes narrowed. Shawn leaned back in his chair slowly. Something had changed. The journalist in front of him wasn't frightened. She was intrigued. Chapter 21. Teach them a lesson. Nikki had mentioned a few days ago that she was going out of town with her family. Michael had forgotten, which meant, suddenly, he was a bachelor, alone. As soon as that realization hit, the voice inside hissed, "Time to hunt." He hated that voice, hated himself for listening to it. But it always knew how to ease the anger, to dull the pain. The headaches were back, sharp, grinding, almost unbearable. So, he would hunt. Shawn met Clara at her office the following morning. His Airbnb was only about 20 minutes away. He had checked in with Kenny. Work was fine as expected. The team back home, they were solid. He couldn't lie to Kenny anymore, so he told him everything. Well, everything minus Faith. His friend and partner had been supportive, even sounded happy for him. Kenny knew part of the struggle. Not all of it, but enough. Shawn had also checked in with the local authorities and the FBI. He delicately turned over the letter, explaining Clara's panic and distress. Then he met with the senior editorial team at the Chronicle. The paper wanted to run the next story Friday morning. The FBI did not. They believed printing the phone call details would only escalate things. Shawn agreed. Giving the killer more attention wouldn't stop the violence. It might amplify it, though. Part of him still wondered, what if not printing of it was the mistake? Michael was confused. He had expected the article, expected the spotlight, his spotlight. The phone call had been specific, personal. He gave them a location, and they printed nothing? Not a headline? Not even a sidebar? Like he didn't matter at all. He wasn't just being ignored, he was being erased. And when the world refused to see you, you made them look. He went to the basement, took more pills, sat on the cold floor with the box between his knees, and there he stayed, in the dark, for 3 hours, awake the entire time. At first, he thought he was thinking, planning, but slowly he realized the truth. He was waiting for the voice. And it came, 2 hours and 45 minutes into the descent. Low, hissing, certain. Teach them a lesson. Chapter 22. Hopes and Dreams. They say a curiosity killed the cat. Michael figured his curiosity would either get him killed or caught. The voice in his head didn't hesitate. Caught. He was back in Oakland, parked on the same street, watching the same house. It looked exactly the same. Crooked blind shades, peeling paint, chain link gate slightly ajar. Would they really be dumb enough to still be using this house? He doubted their intelligence. People like this, they thought they were untouchable. The bodies had been found a few blocks away, tossed like garbage in a city park. He'd read the article 3 times. That was the first breadcrumb. The second was memory, something he'd once read about a bank robber robbing the same bank 3 times. He'd thought, why not check it out? The answer came 1 hour and 17 minutes later. 3 men, same door, same routine, within 10 minutes of the last time. Predictable, lazy. He was already in position. 3 pulls of the trigger, they crumbled without ceremony. He pulled up to the duffels, then he was gone. He took 880 to 92, headed down towards San Mateo. In a motel parking lot off the highway, he dared to unzip the bags. Same result, cash, bundles of it. He stared at the money like it might bite him. This is the last time, he told the voice. But the voice didn't answer. Not yet. Sitting in the dark, car idling, He wondered if he had ever spoken to the voice out loud. Had he moved his lips? Said things without realizing? The voice of reason, the one that sounded like his father, had been gone for a few weeks now. He fell asleep in the driver's seat. 6 straight hours. Best sleep he had had in days. At dawn, he drove south on autopilot. The 101, foggy, gray. He didn't remember making the decision, didn't remember turning off the exit, but the tires knew the road, and his hands kept steering. An old haunt near the water, tucked behind a trail, overgrown, familiar. Only one other car, a small SUV. Michael, restless. He was already walking. 2 people sat on a rock, shoulders touching, watching the water as if it held answers. Probably talking about their future, he thought, their hopes and dreams. The thought soured in his gut. He didn't remember pulling out the knife, didn't remember walking over to the SUV, but suddenly he was there, carving deep, angry lines into the passenger's door. 12/20/68, 7/4/69, 9/27/69, 10/11/69. A list of ghosts. Then, he was walking down the stairs. He counted them, 41. Of course he did. The couple had never turned, never looked up. He wasn't sure when he pulled the gun from his waistband, or how his finger had found the trigger. But then it was over. 2 bodies slumped forward, their heads tilted. A moment of intimacy turned grotesque. Michael stared. His ears rang. His throat clenched. The gun shook in his hand, the fog beginning to lift. And all he could think? What did I just do? Children's laughter, faint, to the right. He turned his head, slow, mechanical. 2 kids at the water's edge. A boat. Closer than it should have been, coming in fast. His silencer had worked, but he hadn't counted on a boat, or the children. He stood frozen, watching the way their hair bounced as they ran, hearing their shouts, pure, shrill, human, a sound that had no place here. A voice stirred. Not the voice, the old one, the human one. That was a mistake. Michael turned and ran, 2 steps at a time. At the top, he looked back. The boat was nearly there. The children would be safe. That was good. Then came the sirens, distant, drawing closer. He didn't wait. He was gone before they arrived. But the carvings remained, and 2 more names had been added to the ledger of the lost. So much for hope, so much for dreams. Chapter 23. The Smoker. 2 cell phones buzzed almost in unison. Faith and Clara excused themselves, stepped away to answer. Each returned within seconds of the other, faces pale with confirmation. It was a Zodiac. Conversation never found a foothold. Each of them treated inward, thoughts thick with tension. Shawn sat rigid in the passenger seat. His mind circled back to the decision not to engage, not to give the killer what he wanted. It had been a firm stance, logical even. But now, 2 young lives were gone. For what? A message? A moment of twisted theater? Maybe it had become fun for him, a distraction. Or maybe something worse, a ritual. The details felt escalation. That's what haunted Shawn the most. In the back seat, Clara stared out the window, watching the city pass by like a slow-moving reel. Her thoughts were locked on the letter, sitting at home. The Chronicle had tried to stay neutral, but she could feel it, the way they hovered, eager. They weren't using her just yet, but they would, if it helped the story, if it sold papers. She wondered if Shawn and the FBI would do the same. He'd ask how the Zodiac had found her address, and why her. Up front, Faith drove like someone playing a role she wasn't ready to admit she'd earned. She couldn't believe it. She was driving Shawn Trammel, a man whose career she'd followed with reverence, and Clara St. Cloud, a journalist whose name had once made her feel less alone. Now, she was part of something bigger. Faith owned a portrait studio downtown. Her manager, Beth, could handle things for a few days. She wasn't going to leave this story. She was all in. At the scene, yellow tape stretched between two posts, fluttering in the breeze. Onlookers clustered just outside the boundary, faces pinched in curiosity and unease. Shawn led the way, walking to the tape and stopping just short of brushing it. At over 6 feet, he leaned forward, surveying the site. 2 body bags, 6 officers, scattered evidence markers, a handful of witnesses huddled to the left. A small boat, bow buried in the sand, engine quiet. He was already forming questions. He wanted to speak to the people from the boat first. A young officer approached. "Sir, I need you to take a few steps back." Shawn nodded, backing away. That's when he saw the man on the bench across the walkway, young, calm, smoking. His posture was just too casual, reclined, like he was watching a parade. It landed like a slap. Shawn would describe it later that way. The face was too far off for certainty, but in that moment, it almost looked like the man was smirking. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just took one final drag, dropped the cigarette, and began to move. "Sir," the officer said again, "please step back from the scene." Shawn turned to acknowledge her. When he looked back, the smoker was jogging, then running. Shawn reacted instantly. "Hey, stop!" He sprinted after him. "I just want to talk." But the man didn't slow. If anything, he moved faster. Each word from Shawn only pushed him further away. Within seconds, he disappeared around a corner, the same direction they'd just come from, a residential web of single-family homes and upscale apartments. Too many ways to vanish. Still, it was worth the chase. Shawn called back over his shoulder. "See what the witnesses know. Drop names if you must." Clara gave a tight nod. Shawn jumped the car with Faith, who didn't wait for instructions. They were gone in seconds. Michael felt electric. It wasn't just the adrenaline. It was who almost caught him. Shawn Trammel, the Shawn Trammel. He had recognized him instantly. The documentaries, the book, the voice. And in that moment, yes, they'd made eye contact. He'd waited, timed it perfectly. When the officer turned Trammel's attention, Michael slipped away. Chapter 24. For Nikki. Clara had name-dropped, just as Shawn had suggested. It got her nowhere. Wrong county, wrong district, no jurisdiction. They could not have cared less about some hotshot from out east. Their words, not hers. Faith and Clara were quick to assume the jogger had been the killer. Shawn wanted to agree, but kept his opinion quiet. There was always a chance it was just some punk kid, a 2-strike felon with weed in his sock and a warrant on his back, a scared teenager who bolted at the sight of a badge. But something about him, the way he looked back, the way he ran, not panicked at all. Still, Shawn said nothing, not yet. Michael was home. Well, not home exactly, just a house they were borrowing from the past, one filled with ghosts and echoings. He told Nikki he'd picked up more work. The plan was to surprise her, sit her down one day soon, and tell her he had saved enough for a better place, a quiet neighborhood, a real beginning. He didn't know how long the money would last. Didn't know how long he would last either, really. When Nikki got home that night, the kitchen smelled of browned hash browns and fresh pancakes. He'd made her favorite. She worked hard. She deserved comfort. And nothing beat breakfast for dinner. They both agreed on that. Michael felt good. His head was quiet. No voices. No pressure behind his eyes. He almost didn't recognize himself without the static. It felt borrowed, like wearing someone else's piece. For a moment, he was the man he wanted to be, only he wasn't. This life, this peaceful, domestic life, wasn't built to last, not for him. Sometimes he wondered how his grandfather had done it. Had he really stopped, disappeared into the crowd, lived a full life without ever killing again? Or had he gone underground, becoming myth, leaving the true crime world with nothing but questions and a legacy of fear? If he was willing to believe his grandfather was a Zodiac, and he was leaning that way, then why not the rest of it? Why not the Vanishing Act? Why not the possibility that monsters could simply walk away? From the bedroom, he heard Nikki changing. Dinner and a show, their little routine. He sank into the couch, staring at nothing. Could he build a life with her? A house? Kids? A future wrapped in blood and lies? Could he fake it? Even for the best of lives? Then she came around the corner, in sweats a little too big, and a smile that lit up the entire room, and Michael knew he had to try. Even if this life was a house of cards, even if he was the wind. Chapter 25, Disposable Phones. The Chronicle liked to say it was a proud paper. Clara had heard it for years, whispered in hallways, preached in meetings, stamped into the culture. But today, she felt none of that pride. The front page story was hers, her letter, her mailbox. And yet, the byline read, Nathan Price. Millions would read it, even more would talk about it, and not one of them would know the truth, that Clara St. Cloud had been the chosen one, not Price. The powers to be had not discussed their decision with her. They wanted to shift focus, take the spotlight off Clara. Their solution? Put a man on it, a clean face, a safe choice. The kind of man they could send to a morning show and a board meeting without anyone flinching. Price was on the fast track, to the corner office, if the rumors were true, and this one was. Clara was still furious, just as she had been when she heard the news that morning. Nothing anyone could say could dull the sting. She hadn't just lost a story, she'd lost the story. She sat beside Shawn in the lobby of a downtown station, both waiting, forgotten, ignored, like leftovers sealed and shoved to the back of the fridge. Shawn flipped through an outdated magazine, but his mind wasn't on celebrity gossip. The killer had escalated, and theatrically so. 2 dead on a beach, a message carved into the side of their vehicle, an echo of the original Zodiac. This one was trying to be clever, or relevant, or both. Shawn didn't believe the killer had seen the children. If he had, Shawn thought, he would have moved on. It was only a gut feeling, but it sat deep and solid in his chest, just like the itch at the back of his brain that he'd already seen the man calling himself Zodiac. Michael read the article twice. It was bland, shallow, sanitized, not up to the quality he deserved, not for the kind of story he was giving them. Nathan Price? Really? From the other room, Nikki was getting ready. They were off to see an apartment she was excited about. Nervous, too, but hopeful. She'd been let down before. If she liked it, they'd get it, Michael had already decided. But that article. They'd cut Clara out. Why? Was it fear? Did they think he had hurt her? Or was it optics, putting a man on the case to give the public a figure of authority? He didn't know, but he didn't like it. Michael scrolled again, skimming the words, experts, so-called, dissecting his work like it was some kind of message puzzle, as if they understood him, as if there was anything to understand. In the article, did the killer hate his parents? Did he hate children? Was he trying to relive the past, be nostalgic? Michael scoffed. He wasn't trying to send a message. He wasn't nostalgic. Michael was just being himself. As far as he could tell, it didn't mean anything. Not really. Still, maybe he'd demand that they let Clara write again. Yeah, maybe that's what he'd do. A loud laugh burst through the other room. Nikki came around the corner, phone held high, showing him a video. A cat chasing a terrified German shepherd in endless circles around a dining room table. She was obsessed with the new social media app. She said it helped her relax. After 45 minutes touring the apartment complex, Nikki decided it wasn't right. Too much carpet, not enough natural light, no space for a home office. Something Michael hadn't known she needed, but now couldn't stop picturing. He hadn't liked the place either, so he was happy to move on. They grabbed lunch, and he listened while she vented about work, the drama, the incompetence, the woman in HR who kept calling her sweetie. Then he dropped her off, said he was heading out to help demo an old barn with some guys. Hard work, good pay. He'd be sore, but he'd shower before he picked her up. That was the story. Instead, Michael drove to 6 different wireless providers, the kind tucked into strip malls, behind gas stations, next to the liquor store, the kind that took cash and asked no questions. He bought disposable phones, one at each store. He didn't know exactly what he was doing, not yet, but the idea thrilled him. He'd read online how it worked. Take a picture, send a video. Leave no trace. Use the phone once or twice, then destroy it, toss it. Simple. He pulled one from his package, typed a message, "This is the Zodiac." He took a photo, sent it to the number he'd copied onto a scrap piece of paper and tucked in his wallet. Then, without warning, he stood, laced his shoes, and found himself outside on a run, not to clear his head, to feel what it was like to move with purpose. And I think that'll be a good place for us to stop today. I hope you're enjoying the journey. Please feel free to check out some of my other podcasts and go to Amazon if you'd like to buy some of the books available now. Again, appreciate the support. Thank you and have a great day.